be problematic for a long time is the idea of imposing a solution, though, to this problem, that you need basically a two-state solution of some sort, and imposing a timeline, basically based on sometimes American elections, whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. I don't think that this is something that we can just come up with a solution necessarily and impose. And to be honest, I think that the bigger problem has always been Iranian and Syrian sponsorship of terrorism. The West Bank economy was flourishing in the mid-90s in large part because of Oslo. We sometimes hear cynics who say Oslo is a complete disaster. It is true that Arafat did not negotiate in good faith, and he turned out actually to be a lot more foolish than anyone gave him credit, the fact that he was actually working for Hezbollah. But despite this, the West Bank actually started to flourish, and the Palestinians started to move towards self-autonomy. The biggest problem is that Iran wanted to foil any peaceful accommodation with the Jewish state, and so does Syria. Syria might not be 100% devoted to Israel's destruction, but at the very least, they want to prevent any peaceful solution. They flourish off the conflict.
When you mention Iran, aren't you really talking about the administration, the government of Iran? Because my understanding is that many of the people of Iran would be perfectly happy to have a state of Israel and don't have this terrible antipathy that the government has.
They have an antipathy to their government in the fact that the government's wasting their money in support of Hamas and Hezbollah, and they actually suspect that Hezbollah, or some of the Lebanese Hezbollah, some of the people beating them in the streets of Tehran. There is a great deal of antipathy towards this policy. They have not been given good publicity about Israel, though. They have been told many things, unfortunately, by their government that's bad about Israel. So they do not have a fair view oftentimes because they don't have, you know, an objective perspective, but they don't want to be involved.
When you're talking about Israel and the publicity, I think one of the problems that Israel has is the publicity. They're not getting their message out. There's so many things that Israel is doing. I went to a lecture on Herzog Hospital and how many Palestinians from the West Bank and from Gaza are being treated in Israeli hospitals by Israeli doctors when they definitely can not be treated in their own parts of their diseases or disorders that need specialists, and they're brought into Israeli hospitals. But Israel is not shouting out their message, and I don't know why, but I keep thinking they should hire the Palestinian marketing people.
I think that Michael Oren, well, no, they shouldn't. I mean,
but I'm just saying, because their marketing people really get the message
They
out.
tell lies that sometimes people are not well informed enough to correct. Michael Oren's the new ambassador from Israel. I've met him a number of times. He's a very top historian. I have a great opinion of him, and he's a great messenger because he knows his stuff. Just to follow up on your point, though, the Iranian people are not getting the good information, but they don't support terrorism. The Iranian
There's so much information. I want to ask you.
There is so much information about Israel. People don't realize how much Israeli doctors treat Arabs, Palestinians, and sometimes Arabs from throughout the region. And unfortunately, Arab medical unions, I'm sure you're familiar with, have sometimes issued rules prohibiting the treatment of Jewish patients. So there's this great contrast between Israel that's devoted to the medical care of everyone and these other...
And they're also doing a lot of work in South Africa that people don't know. The Israelis are
throughout
out there.
Africa.
Throughout Africa. Throughout Africa. I'm sorry. Throughout Africa. And no, the message is not getting out. And I don't understand. You're Israeli. What happened to your marketing people?
The difficulty in getting the message out is when you have so many people, countries, and Arabs throughout the universities which way outnumber the Israelis. And they definitely managed to influence, the outcome of their, I would say, advertisement blitz in various places. Also, there is another issue that, in spite of the fact that there are only about 6 million Jews or 7.5 million Israelis altogether, there are many millions of Arabs all around Israel. However, because of all the successes and all the involvement of Israel, not only in the wars with Arabs, but also in scientific research, in medical advancement, in various areas, that Israel really is considered one of the top countries in the world in contribution that they have in various areas. people conceive Israel to be a huge country. They do not realize that Israel is basically a small state about the size of New Jersey, and they feel that the Palestinians are the underdog. Really, the Palestinians are part of the Arab countries, and they are not the underdog.
You're leaving something important out.
They're the victims.
Israel has no oil. And if you look at the other countries that we're talking about, first of all, they're all dictatorships. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Syria, Iran. You know, we are dealing with Jordan. They're all, you know, dictatorships in one form or another. And the other thing is they have something that the United States needs, by and large, in that it's either direct control of oil or indirect control of oil.
Historically,
that's
we had
an
an
issue.
interest in the Suez Canal, by the way. That was another strategic interest, is the Suez Canal.
But Michael,
historically.
pretty soon, it's not going to be about oil. It's going to be about water, because that's going to be the commodity.
Well,
that's where
Israel's
we're
a
gonna have
leader
problem.
in technologies like water desalination and in
Right.
solar power. Countries that depend entirely on oil, and that would be Iran and Saudi Arabia, they're going to face big problems. Countries like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are doing more to diversify. Jordan's doing some positive economic things, but the Arab world faces a great deal of economic challenges long run. Their countries are very, very struggling. There is a jealousy towards Israel. Israel is the most successful economy in the Middle East. There's no comparison.
And they're also the ally of the United States, and they're jealous of being that they're the ally of the United States.
We have Arab allies. So
But we're talking about-
but it is beyond the jealousy, because we have to recognize that the Arab countries have historically believed that the entire Middle East must be Arabs and must be Muslim. They did not want to accept any other entity within the Middle East. Forget even the resources which exist in Israel, which are basically water resources. And they are not willing to recognize Israel. They are looking at what they can do in the long run. They have short-run objective and long-run objective. The long-run objective is maybe we'll agree to some kind of peace agreement, but they have not taken out of their discussions the need to eventually destroy Israel.
They've always eventually assumed that Israel's temporary and they want to destroy it. Palestinian nationalism evolved from originally a desire to destroy a Jewish state because it was not accepted that a non-Muslim group, whether it be Maronite Christians in Lebanon or Jews, could have their own country. This is true. And then, but for public opinion's sake, they came up with the idea that they were really fighting for the freedom of Palestinians. But unfortunately for the Palestinians, Arabs have rarely done good stuff for the Palestinians. The Palestinians are the victims of this. However, this is...
Isn't it even more than that? Aren't they scared of the Palestinians, who are relatively fairly...
Who's scared
the
of
other Arab countries.
Oh, the other...
Many of them are really scared of the Palestinians in a way, because the Palestinians...
They don't want them in their country.
I think they visualize the Palestinians as having the same ambitions as the Israelis that are next to them.
Let me ask
eventually.
you, can I, Michael? I want to address this one. I think it's really important. After taking office, President Obama gave hope to the Palestinians with his outreach to the Muslim world, and initially a tough stance urging a freeze to all settlements in Israel. What do the Israelis feel about the Obama administration? Do they trust them or not? And how do they feel that after he gave that speech to the Arab nations, and we are their allies, Israel is their allies to the United States, how did Israel really feel? I'm going to ask that to Ben, because Ben, since you're in Israel and I'm Israeli, and I'm sure that you hear a lot.
He's an ex-Israeli.
An ex-Israeli, a former Israeli. Former Israel. What is your feelings about that?
Well, my feeling is that Obama made some major mistakes in his speech over there. The first mistake that he made was comparing the Palestinian refugees to the Holocaust that we experienced in Europe during the Second World War. I think that was an insult to all the Jewish people and every other intelligent person around the world that was trying to give in to the Muslim pressure. Second mistake that he did, and that's what we started with, was by saying that Israel must freeze all settlements right now and right away.
I think he even corrected just recently